Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event.
Let's go.
Round one, fight.
Thank you for tuning in to the Crypto Street Podcast. Here are your hosts, Killer Whale, Prince, and Crypto Dale.
And remember to tip your waitress.
Welcome, everybody. We are recording this on a beautiful, sunny Monday afternoon in Los Angeles. Joined here, as always, by my buddy Prince. Our special guest today is the co-founder and managing partner of City Block Capital, Rob Nance. He's going to join us to talk about security tokens, which I know are a big topic in crypto right now. So Rob, thrilled to have you join us. It was great meeting you out in Venice a few weeks back. I guess just hello and give the audience a little bit of background about yourself and how you got into this crazy world and what has led you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I love your podcast. I got really involved in the security token space the beginning of 2017, maybe April 2017, when I saw what Blockchain Capital had done with their BCAP token. I've been running a venture capital fund for about 4 years now, traditional venture fund. I was in banking before that, which was just soulless, so I had to find something else to do. So I got into venture, and as I was in venture, my fund wasn't investing in crypto, but I started investing in crypto personally because I thought it was very interesting. And as I saw it evolve, I saw the opportunity with what BCAP did, which was to build a traditional venture fund on top of the blockchain. And as I went to raise my second fund, I went to one of my investors and I said, "Hey, I know you invested in my first fund; it's doing well. We put some money in for my second fund." And he said, "Listen, Rob, the average venture fund in the U.S. lasts twice as long as the average American marriage. And I like you, but I don't want to marry you twice." And I said, "All right, well, fair enough." And I said, "Well, I might have a solution to that." So I flew out to San Francisco. I went and met with Bart Stevens at Blockchain Capital, and I said, "I want to do this. How do I do this?" And kind of went down the rabbit hole of security tokens and how to build that. And what I learned over the next year is that it was a lot harder than I thought it was, and that no one knows how to do it. So as I started to go through this process, one of my co-founders, John, who we were investing in a lot of the same companies before he ran a venture fund, I said, "Hey, I've got this idea. We should go start this." He said, "No, it's crazy." He's a lawyer. So he says no to everything.
Yeah,
and,
of course. Right?
Yeah, right. And so I went back to him a couple times more. I said, "Fly me to San Francisco. There's this new company called Securitize. Just came out of Spice VC, which is a tokenized venture fund. Let's meet with them." And what we found is they were one of the very few companies that today could execute on a security token offering and going out and raising money. So we got really excited about that, ended up signing up with them. And that kind of really began our process of this offering. And what we discovered, I went down to Porto Crypto, I think that was March of this year. And I met my other co-founder, Max. And Max is a former Googler. And I said, "Hey, I got this idea. I want to do a tokenized venture fund. And I think maybe eventually I want to do more than one city, start in New York and go somewhere else." And he said, "Slow down. There's a huge opportunity here, which is to build a company instead of just a venture fund that goes out and connects this global capital that you could never access before." So when people talk about like AngelList, right? They say, AngelList was supposed to democratize investing, but it didn't really. At the end of the day, AngelList works with a lot of high net worth families and individuals now. And what I say is that's because people in South Africa, Ukraine, anywhere in the world, it was hard for them to conceptualize investing in startups in New York City or real estate in New York City or anywhere for that matter. And what was really cool about what cryptocurrency did is that it created this understanding that all of a sudden the world was borderless and that you could send and receive payments anywhere to anyone instantly. And so my thesis and what we're doing is that now that this is borderless, that people really anywhere in the world can invest in startups based in New York City or in crypto projects in New York City. And we saw that happen with ICOs. I think the next wave of that, as we've seen regulation kind of tighten down on this, is security token offerings. And whether that's, certainly a utility token can be a security token, but I think the big opportunity is traditional real world assets that exist today that you can tokenize. So startup companies, real estate, I've said before, in our case, venture capital funds. And what we think is really neat is the ability to build the security token infrastructure that's needed today. I'm sure a lot of people watching, and you guys have accounts on Binance. Certainly, can't trade the token that we're building on Binance. It have to trade on in the US what's called an ATS. So that would be something like the Templum, T0, Open Finance. These platforms that are still being built. So what we think is really cool is the ability to kind of build the infrastructure that's going to support that, because we see a lot of kind of traditional assets moving over into that space. So I know a lot of people say, listen, I want to build a revolution, something above the current financial system. I think what we're saying is there's a way to make the current financial system a lot better. And there's certainly a lot of issues that exist today in the current financial system. I think that we've started to hear a lot of talk about the accredited investor rule in the US.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of people go, how is this really fair? I've got a ton of financial knowledge, but I can't invest in these offerings. So one thing that I'm working on is I started a working group to work with the SEC to, maybe we can change that definition, right? When that rule was made, the internet didn't exist, right? There was no way to educate people. And they looked at it as like, well, someone can sustain this loss. But if we could create some way to educate people and help them, I think that could be really interesting.
I was just going to say, as is, it kind of works to keep people who aren't accredited non-accredited,
right?
Because they don't have access to some of these really good deals that other people do.
Right. Well, so traditionally it was venture capital, right? That could take someone from lower class to middle class to upper class. I think we've seen cryptocurrency totally change that, right? How many billionaires and billionaires were made in cryptocurrency, and because the regulators hadn't caught up, they were able to participate in those, and I think that was amazing for a lot of people and changed their lives. I really hate the idea that those people can't participate in our offering necessarily. So I think what's interesting is how could we educate? How could we create a test or some way to educate people about, okay, here's the risk you're taking. We're not saying whether this is a good offering or a bad offering, but that you could lose all your money, and make sure people understand that.
Yeah.
I think we could fundamentally change the way that it works in the US. Otherwise, I think we're going to get left behind, frankly. When I have a really good friend that is doing an offering out of Brazil, and they're specifically not selling to US investors. And I think that's a big deal.
And that's a common theme we're seeing more and more of, I find, lately. I think in the last year, it's been a pretty common theme where the US is being left out of a lot of these offerings.
Right. Absolutely. So I think that's something that we really have to think about. I think the SEC's made it clear they're not going to adjust the definition of what is a security. So I think the way to do it is to work to try to modify that the definition of what is a accredited investor to increase participation. But we see a big shift towards security tokens. I think that's what a lot of people are working on now. Whether it's tokenizing art or something like that. If you look at the market, there's about $700 trillion worth of assets that can be tokenized. And what's hard today is even traditional assets like Apple stock, you can't sell peer to peer. If I wanted to sell you a share of stock, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And by implementing a lot of these systems, we would be able to do that. We'd be able to go to a coffee shop, just like we sold Bitcoin right in the early days. We could go and sell Apple stock or something peer to peer. And on traditional stock exchanges, things settle in 2 days. They don't settle instantly. So we know the better technology is there. It's just how do we integrate that into the traditional financial markets? And so that's what we're really interested in. We're working here in New York City, our first fund, building the security token infrastructure. We're working with the guys from CoVenture, who have a traditional venture fund and a crypto fund. Nikhil and Atit are deploying the capital for us in this region, along with two of the guys from AirSwap. And so it's cool because we have a really good team. We're partnering with AirSwap because they have a decentralized security token exchange, which we think is really important to have that peer-to-peer network. And then two very experienced professional investors and traders on the other side to build a really great portfolio of companies in this space. Like I said, the companies we're looking at are like the Securitize, the open finances of the world, the Templums of the world, the T0s, the Harbors, because we think that's a really big opportunity today in this space. So we're focused on building that today. After we build out our first fund, we're going to issue two other funds, initially one in San Francisco, one in LA. Why geographically? Investors tend to invest in the areas that they live. when it's companies, right, where they're experts.
Yeah.
So while we don't have a specific theme for each region, I would say that it would, if you think of New York as the intersection of kind of blockchain and Wall Street, maybe LA is esports or something similar to that.
Yeah.
So we're excited about using those regional themes, finding great investment partners in each city that help us deploy that capital.
What are some of the main advantages that you would say for the investor in terms of buying a security token versus investing in a VC fund or, doing an angel investment in some kind of startup?
Right. Well, I think the big advantage is liquidity, right? So your money's not locked up for 8 to 10 years like it is in an angel investment or in a venture fund. So potentially you could invest money, and let's say that goes 5, 6x, however many times in 4 or 5 years. That may be good for you. You may want to deploy capital somewhere else, and that would give you then the opportunity to sell that token at that point and capture that gain and not be locked up. A lot of people in venture funds, think of the guys that invested in Uber and Airbnb early. They're still locked up. 10 years later, they have huge paper profits, right? But no way to sell. So it's really important to provide liquidity to that market. I mean, think of those angel investors that were in really early. They would love to sell. Maybe they would have sold a long time ago, and now you have to have these secondary offerings. You have to have these big institutions come in. I like the idea of anybody being able to participate in that offering, right? Why should Uber just be the venture capitalists that gain access to that? Why can't it be everybody? Why can't someone send 3-4 ETH and participate in that? And that's what's cool about our offering. We soft launched last week, and we have people from Japan, Ukraine, and all over the world. Our international minimum is only $1,000, so people are sending us 2-3 ETH, which is awesome.
Yeah.
They would have never had access to the guys at AirSwap and the guys at CoVenture to get the kind of deal flow that they get. So we're excited about the democratization that's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to touch on, so we saw within the past, I think like week and a half, that Coinbase announced that they are going to be, or I guess the story is kind of muddy at this point, but basically they have the green light from somebody to start a securities token exchange, I believe. How was that news received, or what did you guys think of that? I mean, you probably have thought that, the industry is kind of trending that direction anyway. So maybe it was kind of confirming of a lot of the things you guys have thought of. But what was your reaction to that?
Yeah, so for us, it's very exciting, right? Because our token could potentially trade on Coinbase because they're working through to meet those regulatory requirements, which in the US is you have to be an alternative trading system, you have to be a broker-dealer, and there's kind of a limited number of those. So some of those exist today and some of those other companies I mentioned, but they're kind of the giant in the US for kind of retail cryptocurrency. So the ability to trade on there is really, really big. We think it validates what we believe, which is this is how a lot of illiquid securities are going to become liquid in the future. And again, that could be venture capital, it could be startup companies, it could be real estate, it could be a number of things.
Yeah, exactly. Tell the audience a little bit about what you guys invest in actually. So we know the vehicle, the security token is superior, but is it only blockchain companies? Is it tech companies? Is it...
Sure. So this first fund, CityBlock's first fund is NYCQ, and NYCQ will invest in security token infrastructure. So think of that, the exchanges, the issuance platforms. So if you want to issue a security token today, there's a couple people working on the ability to do that. One of those is Securitize. Another is Polymath, which you've heard of. Another is Harbor. So there's a number of people that are working on this. I think there'll be a number of issuers one day that will help people that want to issue these tokens do it. And I think it'll get easier and easier over time. But that's where we're investing. We love finding those kind of companies. Because we're a venture fund, we can invest in utility tokens. There's a limit on the percentage of non-equity investments in a venture fund. So all of our investments are either direct equity in a company or tokenized equity in a company. Mm-hmm. The good news is for an investor in our fund, it doesn't matter because they have liquidity via their token that they can buy and sell.
Awesome. I mean, you look on Twitter, you look on Reddit, you see a lot of people are hyping up security tokens as the next big thing in crypto. I can't tell you how many people I've seen tweet or post or, put it out there in some capacity that it's going to be a big theme of 2018.
Sure.
So I guess in your guys' mind, I'm sure you've had tons of internal discussions about this. Where do you see the security token landscape? I know this is probably hard, but where do you see it going from here? I know it's going to be something that takes a while to kind of get established. You mentioned earlier that you're doing something that a lot of people haven't done yet. So how do you see this playing out going forward?
So I think a couple of things. Early on now, the majority of investors are individuals that have made a lot of money in cryptocurrency. They said, hey, I've made money in this space. I really want to invest into something real. So, utility tokens, highly speculative. This is still speculative because we're investing in very risky early assets, but it is an asset. There isn't real underlying value at the end of the day. So I think initially that institutions aren't ready for this yet. There's very few people in this space that are investing institutional money. So one of the example is Morgan Creek. I'm sure people know Anthony Pompliano and their fund. They're raising a fund specifically to invest into the security token ecosystem and security tokens. I think what's interesting is Mark Yusko, who runs that firm, uses a really interesting example, which is back in 1994, 1995, the word hedge fund, right, was like a really dirty word. And people were like, oh, you never invest in a hedge fund. And the people that did got superior returns for the next 20 years. Yeah. And I think what he's saying is right now is the same is true for security tokens. So I think that crypto investors will certainly drive the beginning of it. And institutional investors will, kind of come and backfill that as more becomes tokenized. And but I think what's cool is that, individual investors led the crypto revolution, which was different than kind of every other, the hedge fund example, right? That was led by institutions. And I think security tokens will also start with individuals because the institutions aren't ready. They don't understand them. They don't understand tokenization. So there's an amazing opportunity right now for individual investors, crypto investors, to get access to, frankly, some deals that they're starting to get kind of cut out from, right? I think that, I don't know if you've seen this, but it used to be kind of any ICO you could get into, and now their ICOs are becoming more and more selective. And so part of what we're doing is, as a quote unquote institution, getting access to these great deals, building this infrastructure, and then providing that to all the investors that would normally want to get into it.
Yeah, Prince, I'm sure you'd agree with that as well, that the ICO landscape is so different from a year before. Just last summer, for example. It's completely different.
It's changed drastically. And, U.S. participants used to be able to get in whenever they wanted and whatever they wanted. Know your customer never used to be implemented. Everything's changed very quickly because obviously there's a lot of money being made. But I think crypto as a whole has kind of been that, kind of to touch on that point you made, Rob, it's been like a retail phenomenon, kind of, right? It's been driven by, just the individual investors. And I think that's going to continue on for a little bit here, for sure.
And I think it's very unique because I think crypto is one of the first really big technological revolutions that has happened post-internet. The internet was so huge in and of its own right. And like you said earlier, Rob, the spread of information is so much more rapid and so much more expansive than it has been in the past. The order of money entry into crypto has been very strange. Usually the retail money marks the top of most bubbles. It's like when grandma's calling you up in 1999 going, what's this Amazon? It's like, that's when it's time to sell your Amazon.
Right.
But it's interesting seeing that in reverse, where the institutions, because of the way crypto is, are slowest to the race. I bet that's kind of cool for you guys, though, like feeling more like you're in at like the grassroots level of something big, right?
It is. And I think what's interesting is working with crypto investors versus institutions, right? So my first fund was mostly high net worth individuals, some family offices. But it's really cool to, talk to a guy in Japan who's sending you, 3 ETH, right? Like that's cool. And he would have never had access to the suite of investments that we can provide, as City Block Capital. You would have never had access to CoVenture, would have never had access to the guys at AirSwap and the deal flow they have. So we're super excited to be able to kind of continue what we think was awesome at the beginning of this, which was individuals could get access to it. And so that's why we're keeping our fund size small. We're creating, we want the maximum number of investors possible by law in every fund, because that provides liquidity too, more investors, more liquidity. And so we're going to do a series of $10 million funds, not do some giant $100 million fund and that's it. We're starting here in New York, but our goal is to keep it small and give access to everybody, because at the end of the day, if it just becomes an institutional phenomenon, we've kind of failed, right? We failed to democratize this. And I think, like you said, at the beginning, it was super easy as a U.S. investor to get access. But, now with KYC, AML, which we have to do as well, it makes it a lot harder for people to get access to. So we're really working to hopefully build this infrastructure out and build a company that makes sure people can get continued access to these deals. I mean, you look at the Harbor deal, which is run by David Sachs, who was part of the PayPal mafia. I mean, that's all VCs in that deal, right? I think it was Andreessen, somebody else invested in it, another Silicon Valley venture fund. Average guy can't get in there. So our goal is to get allocations to those deals and then allow people to put smaller amounts of money in to have access. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like one of the things that'll help accomplish too is sort of be a nice bridge for the older generation of finance types to be like, oh, okay, so I'm investing still in like a security, it's just in a different form that's a little bit superior than, buying equity in a VC, for example, or equity in an early stage company. Right. And that's going to be important too, because there's still so many people who aren't even aware of crypto and they have no idea, and it seems too difficult. It seems too technically challenging. So any of these like kind of bridges I think we can form between the older way and the newer way are just going to serve to drive liquidity, money, bullish sentiment into the space. So I think anything that does that is a really good thing for the whole industry. Well, and I think to your point, you're absolutely right. I can kind of see a reverse trend happening, which is people understanding security tokens because they go, okay, it's a more liquid traditional asset. And then going, oh man, I can send money to this really easily using Bitcoin or Ethereum. And then going, what's this Bitcoin or Ethereum? And then learning more about that. And so I think that could actually long-term drive the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum. Because so we're an ERC20 token. We're built on Ethereum. I think the majority of security tokens in the next 24 months will be built on Ethereum. So I think that could drive the price as well. So I think it's really interesting. We could have this kind of reverse effect happening. I'll tell you one of the most fascinating things about finance in general or investing is just like ancillary effects of something. It's like, let's say you like cars. Maybe you don't necessarily buy GM stock, but you buy a tire maker or something like that, And so it's just how those things kind of shoot off into interesting little relatable things for people. And so I think it's very interesting to watch this develop for sure. So Rob, just wrapping up, is there anything else you want to tell the audience, maybe what's next for CityBlock, where they can find more information about you guys, if they're interested, how to check you out? Yeah, we're on Telegram, CityBlock Capital, cityblockcapital.com. We're on Twitter. I'm on Twitter at RJ Nance. Would love to hear from individuals interested in learning more about what we're doing. We're making a big announcement, and I think I'm going to make it today on your podcast first. We're really excited about, which is Morgan Creek that I mentioned earlier. First investment from their fund is into CityBlock Capital. So we're really excited that they're going to be joining us, backing us, helping us grow this. I think that most people know Anthony Pompliano is out there preaching the security token Bible. So we're really excited to have them behind us. We're excited to grow this firm, go to multiple cities. We think this is the future of venture capital and the way that it should be done, which is access for everyone. And so we're excited to build this. Please reach out to us if you have questions. We have we're always on Telegram. We're always on Twitter. So we'd love to hear from you. Awesome. Everybody check them out. Cityblockcapital.com, Telegram, Twitter. Everywhere you guys normally get your news, I'm sure. So doing exciting new things, smart people behind it. Great having you on. Really interesting to get a little bit more insight into the project. Yeah, thanks for having me. All right, later everybody. You'll probably hear this on Tuesday. We'll have a couple more episodes for you this week as well. So keep an ear out, keep an eye out. As always, good talking to you guys, and we'll see you later.